All right, hey everybody, welcome to the Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. It's Greg LaBeouf here with you. I have Coach Brad, Coach Dustin with me, and it is Thursday night. We're here to do our strategy session, and we're going to jump right into it tonight. So listen, tonight we're going to talk about balance, and this is something that over a 27-year career of teaching weaponizing and helping people weaponize, I've seen a lack of balance, and specific to what? To the training, to the entire overall training strategy. I'm going to clear it up in 60 seconds, but tonight we're going to talk about how to bring balance to the force. Many people understand that they can at any time become the target of a violent criminal assault. These same people know that they have a life, family, and property worth defending. Criminals understand that violence is its own language. Violence is not the sport of competition. Violence is not the art of fighting. Violence is about one thing: destruction. There are those who believe that violence, even in self-defense, is morally wrong. Then there are good people like you who know that defending yourself, family, and others, as well as your property, is not only a personal right, but a duty within a civilized society. Understand, violent assaults are won before they occur. People who learn strategy survive. People who do not will not. For those brave people who believe life is precious and worth defending, welcome to the Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. All right, we are back, and I stated earlier that we're going to talk about balance tonight, and this is probably, again, over 27 years of doing this, I don't know if it's the most misunderstood. I think it's just the most absent fundamental that has to be involved in everybody's training program. And let's just jump right into it so we're really specific. I want people to understand that there's at its root, there's two sides to training, and these are two halves of a whole. This is not 1 + 1 = 2. This is two halves of the same whole. Okay? And it really boils down to self-perfection versus self-preservation. Or I shouldn't say verse, it's self-perfection and self-preservation. So the first thing I want to do is let me just clarify, give everyone, so we're all on the same page for a baseline definition. Okay? But you have self-preservation. And actually, why don't you guys answer for me? So Dustin, why don't you tell us what self-preservation is?
Well, that's essentially the strategies, tactics, and tools that you're going to use to actually keep yourself or help yourself survive violent criminal assault.
Okay. So self-preservation is the shit that we live and die by. It is the hardcore stuff that is going to allow you to survive. It is the strategies, tactics, and tools, as Dustin said, that you're going to use when you are facing imminent grievous bodily harm or death. Okay. So that's the self-preservation. Okay. And then the other side of that, again, remember, two sides of one whole, is self-perfection. And Brad, why don't you just give us a little breakdown of what self-perfection is?
Yeah, self-perfection is the growth of your attributes, growth of your skill sets, your abilities, that are going to essentially allow you to execute the self-preservation even better. So it's kind of like developing like the person as a whole in terms of like a combat athlete. Right? How do we get that person better in terms of their overall attributes, timing, spatial relation, sensitivity, those sorts of things that would be falling into there. So that's more the self-perfection side of things.
Okay. So again, I'm just paraphrasing. Obviously, you've already stated it, but the self-perfection side of it is, again, how do we just get better? How do we become better human beings? How do we become better in terms of more emotionally intelligent, more emotionally resilient? How do we grow our attributes that are the things, the qualities that are going to allow us to better implement the self-preservation side of it? So it is this whole integrated development, right? Where you have these two halves. And I'll use a story or a real world analogy, because I remember when I first met my instructor, when I first met Paul, I remember one of the stories or one of the analogies that he used, which just really, I mean, I don't think I fully understand how powerful this was, but it cleared it up in my mind, and I wasn't even aware of this. But he just talked about over his career at that time, which was 20 plus years, traveling around the entire world, working with the U.S. Navy SEAL teams, the FBI, the CIA, the DEA. I mean, this guy had worked with every, tier one government organization. He'd done seminars for with Dan Inosanto, like he was his, kind of number one guy that traveled with him. So I mean, like civilian, martial art world, law enforcement, military, special ops. This guy had been in front of literally thousands and thousands of people, hundreds, if not thousands, of schools or training organizations across the globe. Okay. And I remember him saying that for 20 plus years, they would go into a school or they'd go into an organization and they would see some that had 20 students. And these 20 students or these 20 agents or, whatever it was, their training was centered around duking it out. Like it was centered around really hardcore shit. And so he goes, like, every time these guys trained, it was fucking balls out and it was blood. And he said you could feel the tension and the animosity in the room, and it was just hardcore. And people left battered, broken, bleeding. But time in and time out, these people would come back and they would slug it out again. So it was this massive kind of slugfest. Okay. And then he said he would fly into other schools or organizations that had 75, 100 people connected to that organization. And he said the most kind of probing or intense question he would get would somebody would ask him about, which way his chi flowed. You know what I mean? How he stilled or quieted his mind, how, things along this nature, which there's nothing wrong with those questions. But I just want everyone to have this contrast, this understanding of self-perfection versus self-preservation and what each of those things is. And now we have to look and said that the balance, the homeostasis, right? Clearly, the majority of these organizations had no balance. There was no homeostasis because people didn't understand that these are two parts to one whole. It's not, because again, and especially, you go back 20 years, 25 years, there was a greater division between it was more about what style do you train? Like where did your art, where did your style come from? Some would, there's hard styles and soft styles, and there was styles or training mindsets, old school coaching that was hardcore self-preservation. And then it was, big on the chi, the flow, the zen, the honor, the tradition of the arts, and that was your self-perfection, but they were separated. And very few organizations understood the importance of both sides of that equation, like to have a whole integrated training system. They just didn't understand that, and so they didn't apply that concept. But of course, just for clarity, what happens if you have an organization that is all self-preservation? Because that might seem good, right? They go, yeah, it's hardcore. That shit's because that stuff's for fucking real. So I get why these guys are in there every time. It's intense, it's hard, it's blood and guts and sweat, because those guys are going to be using this shit. They're going to be doing this stuff. But what's some of the pitfalls with being all self-preservation?
Well, I think there's a glass ceiling in that situation where you might be able to see like, oh, I or someone else could be better at this, you know what I mean? But there's no way to get better. There's no training method there to actually improve upon like the attributes that Brad was talking about. Like, yeah, you might be able to throw an elbow, but if it's really, if your timing is always off, if your weight transfer, your body mechanics, your placement accuracy, like if you don't have any way to actually dial any of that in, how do you ever get better? Like you'll get better, but it's going to be so incremental, so slow. But when you have this whole other world of perfection, you can actually start to dial in all these different little dials, so to speak, to actually improve on all your skill sets. So your strategies, tactics, and tools just become far more effective.
Okay, I have a question off that, but Brad, if you want to expand on it or jump in on it, I'll let you go ahead first.
Yeah, one thing that really just kind of came to my mind based on the example is just longevity, right? Like how long, like if you have a short timeline, like self-preservation is definitely a huge asset. But when you're looking longer as in terms of a lifestyle, how you choose to live your life and weaponizing a part of that for a long duration, It's like, how long can you just bang? Do you know what I mean? And it's like, and it's the part of like why I think it's important is because when you have the attribute development side, the self perfection side of things, it kind of creates a little bit of I had the word in my head, I just lost it. Economy of motion, right? You become more economical. So the things that Dustin's talking about too, it's like you're efficient, you're economical, you're doing the same things where you could put less effort in, and you're getting the greater result than you were before, right? So those are just kind of the points that really popped in my head right away. Is just again, it's just like how like the longevity. What's the long game that you have?
Okay. Okay. Obviously, I understand what you guys are saying, and I 100% agree with it. But let's try to slow the conversation down, or more aptly, let's go a little bit deeper, because my question came up off what Dustin said, and it'll apply to Brad as well for what he said. But the idea is that when you talked about self-preservation, Dustin, you made the points that it's like, okay, you're working the hardcore banging, it's self-preservation. These are the tools you're going to live and die by. So it's like, clearly this is the shit I need, right? If I'm attacked, my family's attacked. How do I fucking save myself? Like we call it filler. Get rid of all the fucking filler and teach me what I need to know. And so one of the points that you made in that is say, listen, you're doing that, you're banging, you're doing all that stuff. And so let's just take something like an elbow. And somebody says, okay, like there's a vicious way to elbow for the street. It's different than a sport application. So there's a vicious way to do that. And you say, okay, so you're doing that, but you'll never get any better at doing that. Like, let's say you're only the guy on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being phenomenal, 1 being, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. You teach a guy and he's banging, and every day he's trying to work those elbows and sparring and all that type of stuff. And he's doing it at a 4, which is okay. You're just learning. So you're doing it at a 4, but you talked about like, how do you get better? Like why, what I want to get, and why I understand obviously, but I want people to understand is, why wouldn't I just get better by doing it? Like I'm at a 4 now, right? But I was at a 1. I didn't know shit. You taught me the elbow, and now I'm throwing that elbow at a 4. But what do you mean? Like if I just keep elbowing, I'll get better. It's like if I'm a hockey player and I just keep shooting the puck, I'll get better. If I just keep passing the puck, I'll get better, won't I? So what did you mean by, like, why won't somebody get better when they're just working self-preservation, or they will, but what did you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, like they will get better, but I mean, one analogy we always use is like, well, what's the express elevator? So yeah, if you just throw elbows every day, like yeah, it's gonna get better over time eventually. Will you reach the same peak? Maybe not, but for sure it's going to be a slower path. It's going to be taking the stairs, right? We're looking for, like you said, we always say the express elevator. What's the fastest way to get better? Well, yeah, you got to be able to break shit down. And there are ways, like attribute wise, yeah, like you're going to get better by focusing on things that aren't necessarily that exact movement pattern or motion, or do you know what I mean? So you sometimes have to work other things to enhance different attributes that are all then put together in, say, an elbow. Do you know what I mean? Like if you want to work weight transfer, so you transfer more weight when you throw an elbow. Well, throwing an elbow might not be the best way to work weight transfer. So you got to come up with a drill to show somebody, like, do this, and you'll actually learn how to transfer weight from one foot to the other foot. And then now take that and apply that to throwing the elbow. And then you can do that with all the different attributes that are part of an elbow. So I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, 100%. It does. And I'll ask the questions, and I'm going to kind of paraphrase and just hit it again for clarity. But 100%, right? We always talk about the express elevator. And what I would want people to walk away with is that when you talk self-preservation, the tools you're going to live and die by, clearly that's the foundation. The house can only be as strong as the foundation it's built on. You don't rise to your expectations, you fall to your level of training. So if it's a life and death situation, you're going to fall to your level of training. What is the foundation? It's got to be solid. Okay, so that's your self-preservation. What Dustin said about the idea of the express elevator versus the stairs. When somebody comes in and they know nothing, and you say, here's the most functional thing you can do that will save your life in this, against this stimulus, let's say, right? We're just using the elbow, whether it's elbow, a knife, an eye, whatever it is. But you say, here's the most functional thing you can do, and you have this individual. And I think it's important for all of us to understand that as human beings, we all have a maximum of 2 arms and 2 legs, right? That's the maximum. Some have less, but that's the maximum. And we all have attributes. Some have higher level attributes, some don't. But let's really clarify what these attributes are. What are these qualities? We've mentioned them, but let's really define it. What are attributes? And I think for most of us, most people, the simplest thing is just they're qualities. They're qualities, and Dustin, you'd name some, and you guys can throw a couple in too. But timing is a quality, right? It's not a body mechanic alone. It's not just weight transfer. It's not just a physical thing. It is the ability to time something. Requires depth perception, all stuff. But timing is an attribute. Speed, like just genetically, how much fast twitch muscle fiber do you have in your body? Like how fast are you? Like just genetically, how fast are you? Now, can we improve upon speed? Can we develop fast twitch muscle fiber? Of course you can. But so speed is that. Durability. I mean, everybody knows somebody that is pain tolerant. In some ways, we're all very pain tolerant. In other ways, we're all soft. You know what I mean? But durability is an attribute or a quality. Spatial, all of these different qualities. And the thing is that we're all born with attributes. And what's the one thing we know about attributes?
They could be improved upon.
There,
They could,
bingo. Yeah, simple, right? But go ahead, hit that harder.
You could grow. Like you could develop your attributes. We're born with a certain base. Like we're born with attributes, but those are not limited, right? It's like, oh, you get if we'll use the scale of 1 to 10. It's like, okay, well, Greg, you're going to get 8 on strength. Dustin, you're going to get 8 in speed. You know what I mean? But no, we could grow and develop as a human. The attributes, they're not limited and confined to just what we were gifted with at birth.
Well, let's use an analogy. Which of us? How many of us were born walking?
Negatory.
Why not though? Why couldn't we walk? Why couldn't we feed ourselves? Why couldn't we, why?
Because we lacked the ability, because we lack the attributes to do so.
Exactly. But
We
as
haven't
you
learned
get 8, 9 months, 10 months, some not till 12 or 13 months or 14 months, everybody was different.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what happened? You started to develop balance. Now, part of this was because your body was still forming, your brain, your inner ear, like whatever it is, but you started to develop balance. Why? Because you started to crawl, you started to sit up, you started to develop neck strength that could hold your head up. There's all these markers when we're born or when, you have kids and, 0 to 6 months. What should be happening? 6 months to a year to, 2, like you get what I mean, but just need people to understand that doesn't stop when we're kids.
Well, look at an Olympic athlete. It's like you said, no one's born walking. Nobody also is born and just hits the Olympic jackpot. You don't just get born and at some point someone goes, oh yeah, this 12-year-old, he's the next Olympic swimmer. And that kid just waits to get old enough to try out.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Or you make the national team and it's like, how hard are those people busting their asses? They make the Olympic team. They train 364 to 365 days a year for 4 years?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Why? Because they understand that their attributes can get better.
Yes.
Right? They don't just, it's not just there.
Yep. And that's a great example because also if we looked at Olympic athletes or professional athletes, you're going to see a homeostasis. You're going to see a balance because like your analogy of the Olympic athlete, they just are not constantly playing their sport. They're not playing the game. Mm-hmm. An Olympic swimmer doesn't just race. He doesn't just show up for the meets and race because he would not get better. If that's all he did, say this guy's just got raw talent. He just has the attributes, the life factors allowed him to develop attributes to X level. He has a propensity for this and he hits the pool and he wins his races. But if all that guy does is show up and race, an athlete who is nowhere near as talented as him, but is training, especially with really good coaches, they're going to develop his attributes. They're going to enhance him. Right? Sorry, go ahead.
Say, what are I don't know if one of you guys remembers, is either Talent Code or Talent's Overrated, but that Jerry Rice analogy. How I don't remember the numbers, but how much time did he spend actually playing the sport of football?
There now, again, I don't remember all the, but he had, his career was a long career, and the hours that I remember roughly, but out of, I don't know, it was 50, I think they did the time frame over a 15, 20 years, some like, a long career. It was almost 4 or 5 to 1 the hours he spent training versus the hours he spent playing. Even they added up his high school time, I believe, too. And just roughly, it was something like 15 to 17,000 hours training it was under 4,000 hours of game played. So 3,476 or something like that. And that's like, you know what I mean? Like, look at the contrast. Now, when we're talking about the 17,000 plus hours of training, we're talking about him running hills, doing sprints, whether it was lifting weights, stretching, nutrition, whatever it is. All these other things that he did to build his attributes, to make him a more integrated person. And then when he actually got in the game, he had a different level of speed, of balance, of durability, agility, whatever it is. But so there was this definite formula to how he did it, and those numbers, depending on the sport or the skill that you're trying to develop, you create homeostasis. Doesn't mean equal. It doesn't mean 1 hour of banging and slugfesting for 1 hour of attribute development. Often, what we see, of course, is the opposite. It's a 5 to 1. 5 to 1 attribute development for every 1 hour spent banging. And this ties back to what you said about, because that is the secret to taking the express elevator. Right? I think, Brad, did you have something you wanted to say too there?
Yeah, you kind of touched on it, but it was really just the point of what he did was not arbitrary. Like, what he did was focused, right? Because he had a very specific mission demands was for football.
Yeah.
Right. And so
to be one of the best. Yeah.
And everything he did was to make him better at that particular sport.
100%. Yes.
And it's no different than weaponizing. It's like, well, there's attributes and certain ways to develop the individual for weaponizing, for self-preservation, so it's you're not just doing random things, because people are like, well, I need strength. And if I just get strong and strong and strong and strong and strong, it's like, yeah, but if you get fucking muscles out to here and your neck's gone and all this stuff, and now you're talking about you're doing that for weaponizing, it's like, no, you don't have the balance. You just overdeveloped one attribute of strength, but now you don't have range of motion, you don't have flexibility, you don't all those sorts of things. So it's like, what stacks to make you the best possible for self-preservation?
Great points. And I think how we break that down is get people to understand that when we're talking the balance, the homeostasis between self-preservation and self-perfection, by design. It is not eclectic. And this is exactly what Brad just said. It is not just, dosing up and getting so fucking incredibly strong and building so much fucking muscle that, great, you have all this strength. But what did that cost you? Because here's the thing, by design, right? We're talking about Jerry Rice, and his self-perfection training was by design. If you don't think that he had some of the top specialists, experts in the world who understood how to build that type of professional athlete, a guy that dominates on the football field. Let's look at it this way. It's like I have $1 million, and I take that $1 million, or let's just say I have an unlimited budget. I have an unlimited budget, and I build myself one of the greatest Formula One race cars in the world, right? It's like this thing is undeniable, okay? But then I take it out to the oval, and I start racing on the oval in a drifting competition. Like, I don't care how much money you throw at it. I don't care how fast it is. I don't care how aerodynamic it is. I don't care so much of what went into designing and building this F1 car, and yet put it on the oval. And while all the other cars are drifting, this car will pass a lot of them. This car might be faster than all of them, but there's one major problem. it's designed to stick to the track. The whole idea is to not break traction as much as possible, right? And so even the driver is just doesn't understand the dynamic of this. That's kind of that analogy of like, it's by design. It's not just eclectic. And that's, a lot of people have this. I think a lot of people too, like when mixed martial arts burst on the scene, a lot of people really, and there's a lot of people probably today that still think, I can just go find a jiu-jitsu center and just sign up and take jiu-jitsu. Then I can just go and find any old Thai boxing place and just go take Thai boxing. Then I can go do boxing, and I can go do wrestling, and I can go do all these things separate from each other and just jump into their normal curriculum, study it, and then go, well, I have black belts in 5 different arts. Therefore, I am a well-rounded fighter. And okay, like, you have line familiarization, you have some skill. And I don't want to stray too far off this topic because I want to talk about the balance between self-perfection, self-preservation, but it's eclectic. Somebody has to teach you how these pieces integrate because they don't just automatically integrate. Again, it has to be by design. And so a lot of people go, well, that's not true. Like when George St. Pierre was competing, he had a wrestling coach, he had a boxing coach, he had a Thai boxing coach, he had a jiu-jitsu coach, he had blah, 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 blah. He had a martial arts background. You don't understand that these guys are expert coaches. They are hired by a professional athlete. They were not teaching him their system. They were teaching him only the components they needed for his next fight. Matter of fact, when he retired, his jiu-jitsu coach said, it's so funny. I've been working with George for, I can't remember how many years it was. And he goes, I'm so glad he retired because now I can actually teach him jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? Because I was never teaching him jiu-jitsu. I never got the opportunity. I was teaching him only the jiu-jitsu he needed for the next guy he was fighting. We're building a game plan in fight camp, and I'm just teaching him the skills that he needed. Now, he was probably learning a little bit more here and there, but it was not jiu-jitsu. And so again, by design. And one of the things I think that really separates George St. Pierre is if you follow him at all or understand his training methodology, he always had this balance. He was doing gymnastics. He was training in things that would be considered self-perfection. He was doing things that other fighters weren't doing, training in different ways to build different attributes. He went back into the octagon every time with better balance, with better stability, with better punching power. Why? Because he was off doing gymnastics. You know what I mean? When you have the core stability to hold yourself on the rings or to do flips and the flexibility and all, you know what I mean? So there was this homeostasis that served him not only in his fight career, but then when he retired, it serves him in life. Look at his health. He's got a balance between body, mind. He's training physically. He's doing, doing all these other things to just promote healthy living. Now his opponent is aging. He wants to stay active. He still wants to be, vital in that, right? So I think those are a couple good examples to help people understand the importance of the balance between these two parts that make up one whole thing, not separate. It's not 1 + 1 = 2. It's not just, I did 7-8 years of hardcore banging and slugfest, got my self-preservation down, and now I'm going to, quote unquote, retire, and I'm going to just work on developing my chi and my flexibility and my power and become a better human being. Great, but you're doing them separate. The two worlds won't unite, not to maximize potential, and that should be what everybody is about, is how do we become a better version of ourselves. That's what the weaponizing process is. It's the mental and physical process for mastering the tool of violence, right? So that you can, to protect yourself, your family, property, and your loved ones and stuff from violent criminal assault. But at the same time, it's the whole person integrated development. It's how you become the best version of yourself to handle life's battles.
And I'm going to ask a quick question because, we are talking about balance. And I think people fall into, and maybe you could expand on this, you think a lot of people fall into the trap of doing what they like.
Yeah. 100%. One of the things that, again, we all come with our bias. We all have our biases, and we're probably never going to completely live our life without, bias. But the idea, I believe, is that when you have something that forces you to, we call it looking in the mirror. Like when you start preparing for violence, violence forces you to look in the mirror and see who the fuck is really staring back at you. It forces you to really see who you are. And more importantly, it forces you to face the limitations that you have. It forces you to face your fears. It forces you to face your conflicting beliefs, your negative beliefs, your negative self-image, all of these different things. It's a powerful process. But we all have a bias. And when I started, I had a bias. And my bias was formed because I had done traditional martial arts. And then I had moved into what I believed was the most combative stuff out there, which was Thai boxing, kickboxing, boxing, the combative sports. And so I had this bias. And I mean that because I was an exceptional kicker. Like I had world-class kicks. I mean, I was a sparring partner for 2 professional athletes, and those guys beat me from post to pillar. But one of the areas that I was extremely dominant, one of the only areas that I was dominant against these guys, that I was better than these guys, was kicking. And specifically, a lead leg kick. So a lead leg roundhouse, lead leg side kicks. Like, I mean, I had this quality. So when after my violent assault and I moved into the weaponizing side of it, kicks, specifically high kicks, but almost any type of kick became almost obsolete because violence doesn't care what you fucking like. It doesn't care what you're good at. It is what it is, and it's an entity. I mean, these are violent criminals, and kicking in a violent altercation is very, very limited, if at all. It's just not one of the most functional things to do. So I had to leave this bias. And so what Brad's talking about is like, we get stuck in these traps. And so the whole idea that I had to be able to look at myself and say, well, either I can continue to just defend or justify the why I want to kick, or but I'm good at this, and so maybe not everybody could do it, but I can, all that type of stuff. I could have done that, or I could have just accepted it for what it was and grown from that and let go of that and just embraced more whole person development. And the only way that was possible for me to tie it back was because it's like the self-preservation side of it did not allow for kicks. It was like they're just not the most functional thing out there. Can people do them? Are there people in this world who could, use a kick to defend? Of course. Are some kicks better suited for violence, multiple? Of course, there are, okay? But very, very limited. But here is the cool thing. There was a place for me to still do what I was good at, to still use some kicks on the self-perfection side. Having that ability to kick still promoted a certain type of flexibility, a different type of hip conditioning. That, my high kicks and having the hip strength and the range of motion to kick high and do that stuff, that helped me on the ground. It helped me do elevator lifts. It helped me pull my guard tighter. Like there was, so I'm just trying to paint for people that sometimes it's not even a matter of saying you can't do this anymore. It's a matter of saying, listen, just understand that when we're talking self-preservation, this is the shit you're going to live and die by. And your bias isn't going to serve you here. It is what it is. And you have to see it for what it is and train appropriately. It's like, Jerry Rice could have been like, I'm so good at this. And they say, well, yeah, you are really good at that. But unfortunately, you don't need that in a football game. You know what I mean? Like, that's filler. Like that, you're never going to do, or you're going to do this once out of every 100 games you play. And even then, it's got a low probability of success. It's just not necessary, Jerry. And you go, well, fuck it, I'm going to try to do this. And even if he could pull it off, how many of us are the Jerry Rices? How many of us are the Wayne Gretzkys? How many of us are the Michael Jordans? Like, we're not. But that's the exception to the rule. We're the rule. We're average people that need to be able to defend ourselves and need a way to train to become better than average. But we're not those guys. And most people just aren't going to be those guys.
We're the dump trucks, not Ferraris.
Yeah, we're the dump trucks. We're not the Ferraris, exactly. That's our always saying. It's okay to be a dump truck. But doesn't mean that you can't, on the self-perfection side, go, hey, listen, this has these qualities, these attributes, these things. And so if we do it in the right way, you can do these things. But we're going to refine them and we're going to put them in the right place. We're going to take those puzzle pieces and put them in the right place so that we are creating a big picture. We are enhancing and creating an end state that we want, the result that we want. And that's where that stuff tends to fit in. And you know, and it's what also makes it fun, because, you know, I haven't looked these stats up recently, and I know that they've changed because sport medicine has changed this, much like medical technology today saves far more lives than it did 20 years ago. Okay, so the idea is this: how long do you think the average career is of a Thai boxer, of a boxer, or of a mixed martial artist? We're just kind of, I know they're very different sports, but we'll just glump them all in together. What do you think the average career or lifespan is in one of those arts?
I have no idea, but I'm going to guess 8 to 10 years.
My head went to 10
Okay.
from being considered professional.
Got it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Because like Thai boxing and a lot of these people, like, they're starting at a very young age and stuff like that. But that's not career,
Yeah.
right? But I would say about 10 years.
Okay. And I think you guys, again, without having looked the stats up recently, I think you're probably right. By the time a guy turns pro and starts competing, he's probably got an 8 to 10 year. And I would think that actually is more the exception than probably the norm for a lot of guys. Now, because you add into that all of the training from a young age, especially if you're in Thailand, right? These growing up in the Thai camps, and, you know, then you got all your amateur fights, and I mean, it's going to take a toll. And so I don't imagine there's too many, but 20 years ago, 25 years ago, the average lifespan was 4 or 5 years, because they didn't have the same sports medicine, you know. And my only point is this: is that, like, often, like Trevor Hardy, one of my kickboxing and boxing instructors, who himself was a professional fighter, he talks often, because today he trains professional athletes, hockey players. So pros that, you know, play in the NHL. He also works with professional fighters, like mixed martial art fighters, and he does a lecture for all of these guys, for his pro athletes in whatever field, where he talks about the risk versus the reward, or the return on the investment. And, you know, if he's talking to a group of young up and coming fighters, guys that have their eyes set on getting into and working their way to the UFC and becoming pro fighters, very few of them are going to make it. It's much like when he's talking to these young hockey players that are working their way up, wanting to play in the NHL. Very few people are going to make it. And it doesn't mean you should stop. It doesn't mean you shouldn't try. It just means that you also have to understand that he has seen the majority of these guys playing hockey from a young age, fighting from a young age, training. Then they get into, like, the WHLs. They get into, like, the junior farm leagues. And the way that their career's going, they get into, like, the unified, they get into the lower divisions of mixed martial arts, and they get in this cycle, and there's where they grind. And so you got this guy who's, you know, started playing higher level hockey 16, he's now 20. These guys fighting at 18, now they're 20, 21, and all of a sudden they're on this cusp, and they get caught in this meat grinder. And he says now they gut it out for 10 years, and now they're 30. They're 29, they're 33, 34, and he goes, it comes a point when their body's shot. They're fucking broke. You know, their time, their money, their energy has been singularly focused on these professions, and they don't make it. And that is 98% of the people that don't make it. Now, it's not to say they don't get anything out of that, but what he tries to get people to understand is exactly what we're talking about tonight. He says, listen, you have to have a balance. There is a time and a way where you have to train hard. It's going to suck, but you got to have that slugfest type hardcore training. But it cannot be all that. You have to have this balance of self-perfection. Young hockey players, you have to use this. You have to learn about money. You have to learn about finances. Not only because maybe someday you do make it. Maybe you get a signing bonus. You don't ever play in the industry, but, you know, whatever it is. But you gotta, like, am I getting an education? What am I going to fall back on when hockey ends? Do I go WHL route, or do I go to university and play hockey there and get an education? Like, there's a lot of factors, and that is the exact same thing we're talking about here tonight. It's the self-preservation, and it's the self-perfection. And as a training organization, you got to understand that individuals that are looking for the next NHL hockey player, you have an agent, you have scouts, you have coaches, you have whatever, parents. What they want is they want the dream. And so they're not worried about whole integrated development. They are obsessively focused on put them in the meat grinder, fucking grind, and get to the NHL. And at the end of the day, when you collect those paychecks, it's all fucking worth it. When we get the status that you made NHL, when you are the UFC heavyweight champion, like whatever it is, we've done this. But life doesn't work that way. And so he sees firsthand the broken bodies, the broken dreams. People are, fucked up physically in their 30s, and they have nothing. And where life takes them from that point, it's not often a pretty picture. I know in the last year, Trevor has lost two really, really good guys, close friends that were both hockey players as well as fighters, and drug addiction and suicide, took them from everybody far, in their mid 30s. And why is that? Because of exactly what we're talking about tonight. The importance of understanding that these are two halves of a whole. And if you don't have homeostasis, if you don't have balance, if you don't have by design somebody that understands good coaching that is taking care of the whole person, right? Then, and I'm talking about the two that ended in the ultimate tragedy. Hundreds, if not, Trevor would know virtually close to thousands of young men that, their lives are a struggle because for 10, 15, 18, 20 years, their lives from as young as, 12 to 15 years old, younger some cases, they've been in a meat grinder. And that's where it's like, for me, like, if I tie it into what we do, you guys have each trained with me for over 2 decades, 20 plus years, each of you. And throughout the 20 years, what would you guys, I don't need you to necessarily put a percentage on it. You can if you want. I know it'd be hard for you to come up with specific numbers, but just share with everybody, what that 20-year journey of weaponizing, because I know if people are following us and they're not familiar with us, I don't know, everyone's perception is different, but a lot of people really find us to be hardcore, very aggressive, because that's what we deal with is violence. But what's the training experience been like in regards to this integrated development and the balance?
It's interesting. Like you said, a percentage, I don't know, off the cuff, 90-10, something like that. Maybe 95-5. Like it's heavy on
which way?
Heavy on self-perfection. Even though we live and breathe and die by self-preservation, it's all we care about. It's the only thing we care about. But in order to make that 5% as effective as possible for us, we need that other 90-95%. But the other thing I find interesting is, like, all three of us, like you said, like, I think I'm coming up on 23 years of training with you. Brad's got to be very close to the same. You're 27 or more. I think you're more now, but you keep saying 27.
My math tends to be off,
anyway,
but whatever. 25 plus.
Yeah. Anyway, point is, what I love about our process, the way we do it, is every single one of us on this podcast right now is at the absolute pinnacle of our game. Like, we're all better than we were yesterday. We're all better than we were last year. And we're still on the upslope. We're still getting better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And people wouldn't be able to tell. You look so good on camera, Greg, but you are a little bit older than us.
Yeah.
And yet you show us on a regular basis that, you're still doing just fine. You can, you can handle us no problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it just goes to, and I love it. Like, I love the fact that I'm younger than you.
Yeah.
Because then it just shows me where I can still go.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I love that about our process, is that we're the best we've ever been. And then if we look back and go, okay, also, how many serious injuries have the three of us sustained in 20 plus years of training?
Yeah.
Very, very few.
Yeah.
I can't say none, because yes, there's going to be some. Well, with any training, there's going to be some.
Yeah.
And of course, when you throw in a little bit of, 5-10% of self-preservation, there's going to be some injury, all that overtraining, stuff like that. But so it's not zero, but man, it's so much lower than I would say most professional sport athletes by far.
100%. And just because you brought it up and referenced it, but yeah, like I'm today 51. I started training when I was 20 21, just about to turn 21. And at 51, like you said, there's been a couple things, over the years, and it's not like I wake up and I have no injuries or no, I don't have any injuries, but no aches or pains or whatever, but nothing that has been exasperated by training. You know what I mean?
I have to interrupt you because your most recent injury, you broke your hand. You weren't training. You're helping someone move.
Yeah, helping somebody move on an icy cold day.
Moving is way more dangerous than weaponizing.
Yeah, helping your wife's friends move is far more dangerous. And all the years of combative, not only sports before that, martial arts training, and then weaponizing and stick fighting and all that shit, and never had a broken bone due to it. And so that's a great point. But you're right, and I want people to understand, always in training from day one, even though the core thing is to get people in and say, we're going to weaponize you. Like right now, we have this 90-day intensive to build the foundation, to give you the strategies, tactic, tools to survive violence. Even within that 90 days, we start instantaneously with this undercurrent of self-perfection. So there's the self-preservation, but right away, we're teaching a mindset, we're building beliefs, and we're showing them how to train specific attributes to become a better human being, to become a better, I don't want to say the word combat athlete, but to become a better warrior, right? Timing, rhythm, sensitivity, spatial awareness. And what's super funny about this is as they go, that balance increases. And this is the thing, because we play the short term, build the foundation, but we always have an eye to the long game, meaning I fully expect, or I want, my goal for everybody is that you come to me in your 20s, you'll still be here in your 90s. And it'll be old age that'll put you in a walker. It'll be old age or something that'll put you in a wheelchair. It won't be from the years of banging, and saying, well, I had this 10-year period where I needed to be a badass so that I could defend my family. 10 years of being able to defend your family is nothing when you have a 80-year, 90-year life. And our lifespan is getting longer, not shorter. And your family needs protection far outside the range of 5 to 7 years. And let's be honest, average people don't survive 10 years of hardcore training. Most people don't. I've been in those gyms. I started in those hardcore training environments, and people don't last 3 years. Never mind 10, 15, 20, 30 years. They don't survive that stuff. Not in a way where they're still functional. And this, we used to joke about the old, getting the black belt was the death sentence, because you had the brown belts were all lean, mean, hungry fighters. And then you had the black belts who all had a pot belly and, blown knees and blown backs and hips, who could teach it and talk about what they used to be able to do. And, that song, I'm not as good as I once was, but I'm as good once as I ever was, which is, often a funny song. I like the song. But the idea is that I don't want to be that guy. I don't just, I want to be better. And as we get older, understanding the self-preservation and the self-perfection and truly having an integrated training system, as I get older and age does affect some of the attributes, in that self-perfection dichotomy, it's a formula. By design, not eclectic, by design, I tweak that. And I put more of this in, and I develop these attributes. And, again, what my self-perfection looked like in my 20s was different than what it looked like in my 30s, which was different than what it looked like in my 40s. And now that I'm entering my 50s, it's different again. I change it. And I remember actually Trevor asking me, he trains pro athletes, and he was talking about the type of, he was asking me what type of workouts that I do separate from training, but what am I doing to strength and, keep my durability up and all that type of stuff. And I was telling him, and he's like, God, that doesn't hurt your joints? How are you doing a lot of these, polymetrics and sports performance, agility training and stuff? Because he's a year or two older than me, and he's like, yeah, my joints can't take that. If I did that, I would be in a wheelchair. But when we are in our 20s and 30s, he trained a lot harder. And I don't mean harder like more. He did more self-preservation banging, holding Thai pads for pro fighters, and people are smacking on it, kicking and punching. He did a lot less self-perfection. And, you know, he'll attest this. He said it in our interview. He talks about this often. He references me when he talks to his players. I started this in my 20s. My instructors gave me the long view. I always have said, I like where I'm at right now, but I can't wait till I'm in my 60s and 70s, because look the fuck out. Because I met warriors that were in their 70s telling me that they hadn't even hit the peak of some of their attributes yet. Yeah, some attributes decline with age. But when you understand the formula and you have the balance, they tweak the attributes. There are attributes and qualities that you can't even begin to hit the peak until you're in your late 70s, early 80s. And I saw what these guys were capable of. I saw 70-year-old guys fucking up 20-year-old big ass, strong, fucking muscular, operators. And it's like, how? Because of attributes. Because they developed everything, not just that, not just the smash, right? And that I was upset. I was like, I want that shit. That's the arc of my journey that I want. So every day I want to be functional. I want to be able to be my own first responder, be there to protect my family. I don't want to have to retire from that role. And so every day, when and how do I need to really push and get my self-preservation? But then how do I get way, way better without the banging, without taking the toll and beating myself down? And that's the self-perfection. And that's the formula that we were taught. That's one of the most amazing parts of this weaponizing process. And I think for you guys, I mean, think about it, like how much more have you enjoyed this journey because there is no retirement date on this? You like at what age are you getting close to retirement? Are you getting close to where you go, I just can't fucking do this anymore. I'll have to just transition and just become a coach because I can't do scenarios with you guys anymore. I can't show up for training. The young guns they're too strong. I just get injured. I won't be able to walk my kids if I keep training. Not even close. And it's fun because where does it stop? It doesn't. It never does. It doesn't have to. The only way it stops is because you just, I don't know, you have a change of belief or change of perception or something. But it doesn't stop because you get too old. And what age is the perfect age to start?
Today.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It was the bamboo tree, right?
100%.
Best time to plant it was 20 years ago. Second best time is right now.
Right now. This is what's beautiful about it. You as scary and as real and as intense as the subject matter is, because you have to see it for what it is, the harsh realities, we have to see it. There is no barrier to starting. No barrier to starting.
We have a saying, we all have it on shirts and stuff like that. Violence never asks.
Yeah.
It's like, it doesn't ask, it doesn't care. It
Yeah.
doesn't ask how old you are. Oh, you're 42? Oh, okay, never mind. I'll go find a 20-year-old who's okay with me assaulting them.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Who has a chance to fight back, because that's fair.
Yeah. You didn't start in your 20s? Okay, well, too bad. Now you're 42. Now you're 51. Now you're whatever. It's like violence doesn't care. So now's as good a time as any to start.
Yeah. And a lot of people do. I mean, and whether men can admit it to themselves or not, they have a fear of injury. Nobody at 40s, in your 40s and your 30s, your mid to late 30s, you don't want to show up and first day of class, it's a bunch of fucking young guys, old guys that have been training, for a long time, and they're beating you over the head with a fucking stick. I mean, you can't walk after class. You go out and say, oh yeah, that was fun. That was cool, guys. Like, that's some hardcore shit. And yet you can't move your body. You're not better prepared to defend yourself. You're weaker because you're getting pummeled. And so, you got to do it. You got to strap your ass in there and do it. No, there's a formula and there's a balance. I often use one of our clients, Dave, and he came to me in his late 50s, and an ex-athlete, but had injuries. And I can't lift my arm past this. I got a problem with my hip. I got a problem with my knee and all this stuff. But, he had a friend of his, an ex football buddy of his, big dude, strong as shit. You know, getting older, doesn't play the game anymore, but was a pro athlete, and he got jumped coming out of an ATM. And, you know, they fucking tied around him in the back of the head and beat the fuck out of him and stole everything from him, you know. And, you know, and Dave's like, I don't want to be there. I got 2 daughters. Like, I got to be able to protect myself. And, you know, but can I? Is it too late? Like, how do I learn to fight when I can barely lift this arm up past here? And it's like, because there's attributes, Dave. And everybody has attributes at different levels. And so that arm having a limited range of motion or limited strength in it, that's just one isolated attribute or one side. This is the weapon. And when you have this self-perfection, everything gets modified. Everything gets built to say, how do we compensate that? You know, like, isn't that powerful? Like, let's just use a bit of a scientific thing here, but you guys have read that study. We've talked about this, but they did this program, and I can't remember when, this is back in the day, but they did a program with astronauts where I can't remember specifically what they were trying to solve, what problem to solve, but what they did is they made attributes wear glasses, and when you put the glasses on, it inverted everything. So the second they put glasses on, everything that they saw, they could see with the same clarity, but everything was upside down. And so these guys are like, holy fuck, like they're right side up, thinking they're walking on the ceiling, everything's upside down. And I think they did it with something about weightlessness, and they're trying experiments, but they did it. And God, I wish I remembered the exact numbers, but I think it was within a few weeks? I think it was a month at the most. I think it was within a few weeks. It was under a month. All of a sudden, what they found is that when they put these glasses on, instead of everything being inverted, everything went back to normal. And at first they're like, what the fuck? The brain literally remapped the visual process to correct everything. Like, how amazing is that? And that's attributes. That's the human machine. And it's so powerful when you have coaches. And I mean it as like, I had mentors, I had coaches, I had people that understood the human machine. And of course, that's always more is being revealed. We're learning more every day. But when you understand the human machine and you understand attributes and those qualities, and you understand how to cook with them, how to mix ingredients and change ingredients and create something that tastes good. For us, it's create something that's functional. It's effortless. You know, and with Dave, we just played with the ingredients and we remapped the attributes, and he is doing our strategies, tactics, and tools. He is existing and developing his own weaponizing process, as we all do, that makes him a functional badass. Like he's right there with the rest of us. Capability, knowledge, understanding, belief. And that's what I love about this process, is that it doesn't matter. Your age is irrelevant. Your gender's irrelevant. Your how fast or how slow you learn is irrelevant. You know what I mean? Whatever it is within reason. I mean, that we all have certain limitations, but it's just a wide open thing if you have people that understand how to use these two halves of the whole and how to integrate and create a process for you, specifically for you. And that's the other thing I love about this, is that this is not cookie cutter stuff. This stuff is designed. It's like, yeah, we all share and use the similar strategies, tactics, and tools, but I mean, how customized has this journey been specifically for you, Dustin, or specifically for you, Brad, or for any of the hundreds of students, if not thousands of students we've trained over the last almost 3 decades? How specific? Talk to that a little bit. How have you guys seen me coach, or how have you guys coach for you and for other people? How customized is this journey for each person?
Well, I'll tell one thing that, not so much in talking specifically about exactly what it was, but more so on the end result, right? And what I mean by that is that pretty much every single time that we've done our combat schools and kind of our immersion training and such, is that, or long extended exposure, is I always left being like, that's exactly what I needed. Mm-hmm. You know, and I've never once had an experience where I was like, yeah, it was good, but I don't think it really helped. No, it was never like that. It was always like, fuck, that's exactly what I needed. And I left feeling so much more developed and had so much more growth because it wasn't just show up and this is what we're doing. It's like, no, show up and this is what we're doing for you because this is
Yeah.
what you need, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Dustin, you were going to say something?
Yeah, 2 points. One, I mean, we have an inner circle group that trains together every Sunday morning. Some of the most serious people, involved in the weaponizing process. But like, guess what? Not every one of us is the same size. You know what I mean? Like, height ranging from I don't even know what 5'2" to 6'4". Body weight ranging from 150 to 250. Like, very different sized individuals. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, can we all still do it? Can we all still work together? Yeah, we can. And when you teach to it, you often mention that. Like, oh yeah, we'll do this, do this, do this, do this. Oh, you know what? For you, you're a little bit shorter than the guy you're working with. Try this, try that. How does this feel? So you're constantly customizing just on the fly for what works for people. I think it was either Tuesday or last Tuesday, the three of us were rolling and you were explaining something to me and Brad, and you're like, well, I do this all the time. And you're like, but that also could just be because I'm much taller than you guys. I have longer legs, I have a longer torso. So when I'm on top, this works. He's like, you said, try it, see what you think. And you don't like, then maybe try this. So it's constantly being customized at all times for anybody doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And the same would go, and I'll say it to, like, you can have a guy that's, like we do, you got Shane, 6'2" or 6'3", and, 300 pounds, like big, strong as an ox. And you got Henry, who's, 5'3" and 160 pounds or 50 pounds, whatever. Great shape, great athlete. That's a massive size difference. But there's a way that we use, tools, weapons, whatever, different things that we create this. We can create an environment where Henry is superior to Shane. And in training, we enhance Henry's attributes to such a level that puts Shane at that pressure disadvantage where his skill gets to grow. Yet you need, and a lot of people struggle with this. They say, well, I don't have somebody my size or my weight to work with, big or small. I don't have, I know in fighting, in the fighting world, they'll like Trevor and those guys will often say, oh, we got a fight coming up, but the guy I'm fighting is a southpaw. And to say, we don't have any good southpaws in our gym. The only southpaw we have is 6 months worth of training. Like, how am I going to use him? Who do I practice with so that I could get the experience and learn what I need to learn when I face a good southpaw? But there's ways to use the self-perfection to compensate for that. Now, it's great if you got a world-class southpaw and you can actually get in there and do some of your self-preservation training against them. But the self-perfection allows you to create these circumstances. I always said it's like gardening. What do we need to grow? We need to grow this attribute. We need to grow this belief or this way of thinking or perception or whatever it is. And when you understand how to create the environment, like how to put the right nutrients in the soil, you can grow anything. And that's self-perfection, not self-preservation. And that again is that disproportionate, but each is one half of a whole. And you create that, and it's powerful. And you just see people grow so fast. We'll come back to, maybe as we get ready to wind this up, we come back to the concept of the express elevator. How do you take average or even below average people, right? And by below average, I don't mean less than, but how do we take a white collar husband, wife, who's never really done any type of real training. They've never really been involved in any type of contact sport. They have not led an aggressive, nothing in their history has given them a predisposition or built attributes for this type of environment. They have attributes. They're smart, they're well respected, they're all these things, but they don't have the attributes built for this type of environment. Yet they have a need and a desire to protect their family. Only if you have a powerful formula for how to start, if you can, you have to identify, know the attributes, and then say, here's how we give you the express elevator. We'll get you moving, we'll get you thinking, we'll give you the attributes of somebody who has been doing, combatives or contact sport or whatever since you were 15 years old. You can expedite that process.
Well, What's funny is those people, the ones who have that history, which is like a lack of sport, all that stuff you just listed, is like you think of as like they don't understand how perfect of a prospect they are
Yeah, 100%.
because they are so coachable.
100%.
They're gonna take every single thing we say and be like, "Yep, perfect, got it."
Yeah.
Try it, do it, implement. They're on their way.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, we came from backgrounds, we had to undo some shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We came in as square pegs, and it's like you can't just put that through a round hole.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
people who have nothing, they're not even a peg. They're water.
Yeah.
Just pour it through the hole. Done.
Yeah, I always say, poor Paul. I came in as a square rock, and he had to get a lathe and grind off the edges to fit me into the round hole. You know what I mean? And then ultimately teach me how to adapt into any type of shape. But my dream clients, my dream customers, are people that have zero experience. They have no prior training, no prior experience to it. Because as you said, they're open to everything. And all they do right away is they're at the start line, and all they need is somebody to say which way. Like, I start going this way, but boom, they're off to the races, and it's just result, and it's such an expedient process, and they see these changes in as little as 3 months, which is why we did our 3-month and 90-day intensive. Is in little as 3 months. I mean, people see it in the first couple of weeks. They feel it. And I say 3 months, 90 days. And that's training minimum 2 days a week at half an hour at a time. 1 hour over the course of an entire week, 2 30-minute protocols. If you do that, you will see the results in 90 days. If you can go 3, even better. 4, great. But 30 minutes a day, you don't need any more than 30 minutes a day. Remember, we're not training to be professional athletes. You're not making the Olympics, and I don't, with 30 minutes of training a day, we don't need to be. Violence isn't about competition, and it's not about fighting. Violence is a very different thing, and that's all people need. So yeah, those are absolutely my dream clients, because we just have the process, the balance of self-perfection, self-preservation, and put that together, and you change somebody in a very, very short period of time. And then I always say it, right? This will be my last comment, I think, but time is the greatest gift. You never know how much of it you're going to get. And every training should always be about one thing: making somebody better, making them safer, and making them better as a human being, all integrated whole development. And every time you train, we always say you're only as good as the last time you trained, because the gift of time, if I train today, and hopefully tonight I will go to bed and sleep through the night, and violence won't find me. Won't kick my door in at 3:00 in the morning. I won't hear some woman being beaten in the front street, and I won't have to engage in an act of violence that could potentially end my life. So tomorrow I wake up and I've been given the gift of time, I will train again. And I don't care if it's 30 minutes, I'll put in my protocol and I'll get better. And when you do this, it's the compounded interest of just consistent movement forward, but taking the express elevator. The balance between self-perfection and self-preservation. Self-preservation is the foundation. Self-perfection is how we accelerate and become the best version of ourselves, so we can protect our family and just the best version of ourselves that we put out into this world, right? Living with a life of conviction, passion, and purpose, right? That's the whole goal. So any final thoughts from you guys?
Nope. Great conversation.
Yeah, I love it, right? And I guess we'll end it with this. Self-perfection, self-preservation, they have to be there. They have to be done. It's not 1 + 1. It is 2 halves of a whole. Make sure that whatever you're training in, you're balanced. You have homeostasis. Somebody by design is using both sides of these equation to balance you. Please do not get caught in the meat grinder and make your training career, whatever it is you're in, a 10 or 12-year career or less. It's not worth the risk to reward. It's a long life. Hopefully we're blessed with a long life, and your family, your friends, you need to be able to protect yourself. The world, there's a lot of amazing people in this world, but there are individuals out there willing to hurt you if they're given even half a fucking chance. And we need really good people to weaponize to be able to stand up. We're going to end and just say my thoughts. It's soul crushing for what happened in Texas, and an 18-year-old kid taking the lives of anybody But these young children with their whole lives ahead of them, the young teachers, violence, and I'll say it, Gavin DeBecker says it, and I'll say it here, the solution to violence, not that maybe we need different law, but the solution to violence has always been and always will be the acceptance of the reality about violence. We have to be willing in our world to start having real fucking conversations about violence, not just conversations about gun control, not just conversations about, any one aspect of it. We have to be willing to have conversations about fucking violence, because that's what gives us the high ground. And from the high ground, we can see the threats that are coming. The threats are not just about guns. The threats are not just about any one thing. We have to have and start facing the harsh fucking realities, because it's all a part of it, and it's always been enough. It's not saying, oh, it's enough now. No, it's always been too much. Violence is toxic, corrosive, and septic, and it destroys 98% of all people that come in contact with it. And this is why we're so passionate here. We need to weaponize people. We need to weaponize our minds and bodies, and accept the realities of violence. That's the solution. Always has been, always fucking will be, because nothing comes until you can see it for what it is, right? So, anyways, tragedy, tough to even think about, but we have to. Okay, so that's it. Dustin, Brad, thank you guys so much. I appreciate you for your time, your knowledge, your energy that you guys put into this, and your willingness to share. Anybody that watches, please like, follow, share, comment. We deeply appreciate it. Our mission here is to weaponize the fucking world, man. It's to help people mentally, physically become better versions of ourselves, safer versions of ourselves for ourselves and our families. We have a 90-day intensive, 90 days, 3 months, and you can build a foundation that you'll carry with you for the rest of your life, as little as 2 days a week. It's a virtual intensive. You get live coaching in it. It's an amazing offer. It's an amazing opportunity to do it from anywhere in the world. You're not geographically bound. Right from the comfort of your own home, your entire family can go through this. Check out our webpage. There is information to come, and just scroll to the bottom of the page and look for our 90-day intensive. Check it out, and that's it, everybody. Please stay safe, stay weaponized. We will chat again soon, everybody. Have a great night. Hey, thanks so much for listening. And listen, if you found this content valuable, here's 3 different ways that I can help you weaponize for free. First, grab a free copy of my ebook, The Education of a Weaponized Man. To get your free copy today, head to ebook.awakentheprotectar.ca. Number 2, you can take a free workshop where you will discover the 10 insights violent criminals don't want you to know. To take this workshop, head to workshop.awakentheprotectar.ca. The third way is to head to my website and check out all of my Freeline programs that cover everything from mindset to strategies. To check us out, go to awakentheprotectar.ca. And finally, leave a 5-star review so that we can reach more good people like you who are ready to weaponize and rise regardless.